Hi class, this will be one of two videos that I'll be doing for connective tissue. Just to recap, we have 4 tissue types in our body. Epithelial tissue, we've already gone through that. You have to have that down. Today we'll be doing connective tissue, and later on we'll be doing muscle and nervous tissue. So what is connective tissue? Well, connective tissue connects all other tissues in our body together. It is the most abundant tissue in the body, and it is absolutely essential to the structure and function of all other tissues and organs. I read somewhere that it is basically the glue that keeps us together. Some examples of connective tissue would be bone, tendons, ligaments, adipose, which is basically fat, cartilage, and blood. Some basic functions of connective tissue. Number 1 would be physical protection. We have our bones, like the cranial cavity bones that protect our brain. Support and structural framework. Examples of that would be the cartilage that's supporting the structure of your nose and ears. Your nose and ears are all cartilage. It's binding other tissues of the body together. Example would be tendons. Tendons put muscle connected to bone. Ligaments connect bone to bone. Transportation, an example would be our blood. It's transporting lots of stuff. Oxygen, white blood cells, nutrients, hormones, a bunch of stuff. Storage, an example would be bone stores calcium. So we have calcium stored in our bones, and fat obviously is stored in our adipose tissue. And immune protection. Anything that has white blood cells is going to protect us from everything outside that wants to kill us. So blood obviously carries lots of white blood cells, and there are some connective tissues that we'll talk about today that actually have white blood cells within them also. Now, the characteristics of connective tissue. You already learned about the characteristics of epithelial tissue, your crap. Make sure you understand your crap. Now, the characteristics of connective tissue are different. C for epithelial tissue, that stands for cellularity. The cells are close together. There's no intercellular space in epithelial tissue. In connective tissue, the cells are far apart. Here's our cells. They are far apart. There's lots of intercellular in between the cell space between these cells. Extracellular means outside the cell. A in crap means avascular. Here, connective tissue is very vascular. So there's going to be one exception we'll talk about today. And in connective tissue, we have several different types of cells that are found within our connective tissue. But despite connective tissue being so variable from blood to bone, what do they all have in common? This you have got to know. All connective tissue has these three things. 1, there are connective tissue cells that actually live in that connective tissue. And these connective tissue cells are going to be making protein fibers, and they are going to exocytose those protein fibers out into the intercellular space. remember what exocytose means? Exo means outside, cyto means cell. So this is the movement of something outside to outside of the cell. So these blue and green lines are representing protein fibers that have been exocytosed, made and exocytosed out by these cells that live there, and something called ground substance that we'll be talking about. That's also made by these connective tissue cells that live there. They're going to make that ground substance and exocytose it out into this intercellular, aka extracellular space. And these protein fibers and ground substance together are called the matrix. Now this matrix is non-living. Non-living matrix. This matrix is going to be very, very important. So first, let's look at the protein fibers that we can have in this matrix. So we said the matrix is composed of protein fibers and ground substance. Now, the protein fibers that can possibly be in that matrix are going to be collagen fibers. Now, if we were in class, I would bring an electrical cord and show it to you and say, think of collagen as this. It's strong and cord-like. It's flexible, but it is strong. The next protein fiber, these are called elastic fibers. They think of them as like elastic rubber bands. You can stretch them and they're going to recoil when you let go. So elastic protein fibers have the ability to stretch and recoil like a rubber band. And then we have our third possible protein fiber is going to be reticular fibers. Now reticular fibers form a web-like mesh that is going to hold and support. And if we were in class, I would be bringing my fishnet stockings and showing you this is kind of actually how reticular fibers to me look like and how they hold whatever within them. So ground substance. We know the matrix has ground substance. That ground substance is made by the connective tissue cell that lives there. What is it? Well, mostly it's going to be some kind of glycoprotein and polysaccharide molecules, but there's going to be some modifiers in there. And this ground substance is going to be the way we are going to classify our connective tissue. If that ground substance is liquid, if it's going to be a liquid or watery ground substance, that will give us our blood connective tissue. If that ground substance is syrupy or gel-like, it's going to give us this big category that we call connective tissue proper. If that ground substance is firm but flexible, it's going to give us the connective tissue we call cartilage. If that ground substance is hard, it's going to give us the connective tissue bone. Now, today we are not going to be doing blood. We'll do blood when we get to the cardiovascular system. And today we are not going to be doing bone. We'll do that when we get to the skeletal system. So today we're going to do connective tissue proper. That's going to be on this video, and video number 2 we will be doing cartilage. So connective tissue proper, we said the ground substance was syrupy or gel-like. If we were in class, I would be bringing a bottle of K-Rose syrup, and I would be pouring it in a petri dish for you guys to all see. It's like this. It's kind of like honey too, that thickness, the consistency of honey. It's not watery. It's more of this syrupy consistency. So when we're dealing with connective tissue proper, always have it in your head. The ground substance is gel-like. It's syrupy. What else is going to be in the matrix besides the ground substance? Protein fibers. Remember, these two things, ground substance and protein fibers, make your matrix. So next we're going to look at, well, we know the ground substance in all connective tissue proper is syrupy. What about the protein fibers? How are they arranged? Now, depending on the arrangement of the protein fibers, our connective tissue proper will either be loose connective tissue proper. Loose means the protein fibers are in a loosey-goosey arrangement. If the protein fibers are arranged in a dense manner, meaning there's lots and lots of protein fibers, we're going to call it dense connective tissue proper. So, if you hear the term loose connective tissue proper, what does loose mean? It means the protein fibers are in a loose arrangement. If it's a dense connective tissue proper, the protein fibers are arranged. They're packed in there. They're densely packed in there. We're going to start with loose connective tissue proper. There's 3 types of connective tissue in this category. Oh, I forgot to talk about the cells that we can find in connective tissue proper. Because there's 3 things that all connective tissue has, right? The cells of the connective tissue, the ground substance, and the protein fibers. So what kind of cells can we find in connective tissue proper? First and foremost are going to be the fibroblasts. These are the main cells found in connective tissue proper. Fibroblasts, they are making fibro. What is fibro? We're talking about protein fibers. So fibroblasts, they make the protein fibers and they make the ground substance that they are going to exocytose into their extracellular matrix. And depending which connective tissue they are in, the fibroblasts can make all 3 of the protein fibers, collagen, elastic, and reticular, or they can make just 2 of them, or maybe they're just going to make 1 of those protein fibers. It all depends on which connective tissue they are in. Adipocytes. Adipocytes are just fat cells. Macrophages. Macrophages are phagocytes. Hopefully you learned about these in Introduction to Biology. These phagocytes, aka wandering cells, these are going around looking for foreign invaders just like Pac-Man and trying to gobble them up and protect you. They're part of your immune system. So now we're going to look at connective tissue proper. We're going to start with our loose connective tissue proper. We have 3 types of loose connective tissue proper. The first one, and this is a good idea to make index cards with this information. The first one is areolar connective tissue. The main cell type is going to be the fibroblasts. And the fibroblasts in areolar connective tissue make all three protein fibers. 1/3 are going to be collagen. 1/3 of the protein fibers are going to be elastic, and 1/3 are going to be reticular protein fibers. These protein fibers are loosely arranged and have a pick-up stick pattern. If you've ever played that game, pick-up sticks, and you drop the sticks, that's what this looks like. Areolar connective tissue has phagocytes, these wandering cells that are going through the ground substance, this gel-like ground substance, looking for any foreign invaders. Where is areolar connective tissue found? It's found underneath all epithelial tissue. When we are doing epithelial tissue, we said epithelial tissue sits on a basement membrane, and just deep to that basement membrane is connective tissue. It is areolar connective tissue. Need to know that. So before we go on to these other two types of loose connective tissue, let's look at the areolar connective tissue. So here is a slide of areolar connective tissue. This is a really pretty slide. Here we can see our protein fibers, this dark, thick pink fibers that you see here. See these thick, dark pink fibers? These are collagen. So this is collagen protein fibers. Here, this thinner purple lines here, this is all elastic protein fibers. Now we said areolar connective tissue has all three protein fibers, but you need a special stain to see the reticular protein fibers, so you can't see them here. But on any exam or quiz, I could say, what kind of protein fiber is this one? And you would say collagen. What kind of protein fiber is this guy right here? This is elastic protein fiber. Where are the fibroblasts? These are the nuclei of the fibroblasts all throughout here. These are the fibroblasts that are making these protein fibers. Now, on this slide, I can see two white blood cells. Here's one here, and here's one here. So this areolar connective tissue has white blood cells in it, which is pretty unique to it. Where do you find areolar connective tissue? Underneath all epithelial tissue. And a question for you guys that you have to figure out before your lab practical, and I am not going to give you the answer, is why is it a good idea to have areolar connective tissue underneath all epithelial tissue? Why not have another type of connective tissue underneath all epithelial tissue? Also here, this white part here, this is your ground substance. See where the white space is? So that's your ground substance. This is your syrupy ground substance in here. So loosey-goosey protein fiber arrangement. This is areolar connective tissue. Here's another slide of areolar connective tissue. Not quite as pretty as the other one, but still you can see that pattern. The loosey-goosey pattern of the protein fibers. This thick, dark purple, that's the collagen. These thinner ones are the elastic protein fibers. Here are the fibroblasts, the nuclei of the fibroblasts in the background. Can't see reticular protein fibers. Why? Why can't you see the reticular protein fibers? Now we're going to go, get back to, now, so you saw areolar connective tissue. Now we're going to do reticular connective tissue. Nice to make a little card for him too. His main cell type is also the fibroblasts. The main protein fiber that these fibroblasts are going to be making are reticular fibers. Remember, reticular fibers give us that mesh look, like our fishnet stockings. Where is it going to be found? Where do we find reticular connective tissue? It gives a supporting framework to soft organs, soft, mushy organs like the liver and spleen. And it's also giving support to the bone marrow. So let's have a look at reticular connective tissue. Now, reticular protein fibers, you have to have a special stain. So this has that special stain, and this slide is actually from the spleen. So I'm going to go a little bit higher here. So all these fine little black structures here, these are reticular protein fibers all in through here. So these are reticular protein fibers. Easy to see, right? You can easily see these protein fibers. The cells that you see back here, these are not fibroblasts. These are the cells of the soft organ that these reticular fibers are in. I'm sure some of these are fibroblasts. I just don't know which ones. Here is the white space where we have our ground substance. Reticular fibers, easy to see. Found in soft organs, giving support to our soft organs. Here's a close-up of those reticular fibers. So here you can easily see that meshwork of those reticular fibers. Remember, what are all these cells that you're seeing back in here? These are the cells of the soft organ that these reticular fibers are within. I'm sure the fibroblasts are in there, just cannot see them. Now, our last loose connective tissue proper is going to be adipose tissue. The main cell type here are going to be adipocytes, and they're going to be surrounded by areolar connective tissue. Their function is to store fat, supply insulation. Insulation, just keep things warmer, and protection. Some of our organs are going to have fat wrapped around them to protect them. So let's look at adipose tissue. Now, adipose tissue is a strange connective tissue because it doesn't really follow the rule of the cells are far apart. These adipose tissues are all right next to each other. There's not lots of intercellular space in between these adipocytes. Basically, what an adipose cell is just a big space to store fat. This whole thing is just storing fat. Here is the nucleus of this adipocyte. Here's the nucleus of this adipocyte. When the fat fills up the cell, it pushes the nucleus to the periphery. And in between these adipocytes is going to be areolar connective tissue. See, I think I have another picture. So here, all these are adipocytes. Lots of adipocytes. Here's the nucleus of that adipocyte pushed to the periphery. Remember, what's inside of here? Fat. This is just fat. There's the nucleus. Nucleus, easy to see, right? Adipose. That's adipose tissue. So now we're going to go over to our dense connective tissue proper. We have two types. What does that word dense mean anyway? What is dense? The protein fibers are densely packed in there. These protein fibers were loosey-goosey in there, in that matrix. These are going to be packed in that matrix. So dense regular connective tissue. The main cell type is still going to be the fibroblast. The main protein fiber is going to be huge numbers of collagen, and those collagen protein fibers are going to be arranged in a parallel fashion. And I'll show you that shortly. Where do you find these and what's their function? These are found in your tendons and ligaments. You have to remember, tendons and ligaments are made from dense, regular connective tissue. Tendons attach muscle to bone. Ligaments attach bone to bone. So let's look at that dense, regular connective tissue first. Now, all this pink stuff is collagen. See how it's arranged in a parallel pattern? It's kind of wavy, but still they're parallel to each other. All this collagen is parallel to the one above and below. These dark, slender things right here, that is the nuclei of the fibroblast. There's so much collagen packed in here, it's squishing those fibroblasts. Here is the ground substance. Not very much ground substance because there's so many protein fibers packed in there. Nothing else looks like this. This is dense, regular connective tissue. Next, we're going to go and look at dense, irregular connective tissue. The main cell type is still the fibroblast. It produces also a large number of collagen fibers, but the collagen fibers are arranged in multiple directions. So having collagen going in multiple directions, it's going to give strength in multiple directions. And for your purposes right now, it's found in other places, but for right now, we're just going to talk about the dermis of the skin, because our next class period, we actually are going to be looking at the skin more. But we'll talk about dense irregular connective tissue in other places too. But for now, just know it's in the dermis of the skin. So what does that look like? So here is a slide. This is stratified squamous keratinized. This is from the skin. So we said just beneath epithelial, all epithelial tissue, there's going to be a layer of areolar connective tissue. But then deep to the areolar connective tissue is going to be this. This is all dense, irregular connective tissue. So let's look at that closer. This is all collagen. Collagen running in multiple directions. Some of it's coming straight at you, some of it's going this way, some of it's going sideways. This is dense, irregular connective tissue. Nothing else looks like this. You can kind of see, I think you can kind of see the fibroblasts, the nuclei of the fibroblasts back in here. So that's the fibroblasts. This is dense, irregular connective tissue found in the dermis of the skin. I think I have another picture too. So this is just another picture showing you what dense irregular connective tissue could look like. This is all collagen. It's a mishmash of collagen going in all different directions. I think that was my last slide for this one. Yes. So this video, make sure once you finish this video, you go to your lab worksheet. Hopefully you had your lab worksheet out while you were looking at this video, because it has lots of these same pictures that are outlined for you in your lab worksheet. And I have questions in your lab worksheet that you must answer. So our next video will be on cartilage.